Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for November 3rd, 2025. Well, I'm going to be talking first about some developments on the diplomatic front, but I'm going to come back to the warnings about financial crises, which we cannot ignore. So let's start first with the developments of the various moving parts of diplomacy following the series of conferences that took place in Asia. President Trump, of course, was there. He went to the ASEAN meeting and then the APEC summit. He met with Xi Jinping. He met with the new Prime Minister of Japan and also South Korea, and pronounced himself very pleased with these developments. Now, the problem is he didn't stick around for the further discussions where at these conferences, nations of the global South moved ahead with trade deals, with new alliances, with new plans for great projects. And this is an area where the United States should be involved on the bubble question, because what we're seeing is warnings coming from sober individuals who are clear that we're not seeing economic growth. It's not healthy what's happening. And the mistake of money flowing into financial transactions as a healthy economy is exactly what brought things down in 2007, 2008, again in 2021. In both cases, the Federal Reserve had to intervene with huge volumes of liquidity to bail out the financial system. That's where we are again today. Recently, Jamie Dimon made a comment that it cost about $14 trillion to cover the repo shortage, that is the repurchasing agreement shortage that banks could not handle in 2021. And the Fed had to jump in with quantitative easing, which led to a huge jump in inflation. Now, we're seeing the same thing today, only Dimon said, instead of needing 14 trillion, we may need 140 trillion in paper money and in funny money from the Federal Reserve to bail out the banks. Now, this is something which is related to this idea of the everything bubble, that the mistake that you can always bail things out, you're just adding more debt. What's the problem with adding more debt? Well, the problem is it eventually comes due. And the idea that somehow you can bail out a system that's overly indebted is a mistake which has not been learned yet. And what we're seeing now is the new bubbles are being backed up by money from the central banks. And where's much of that money going? It's going into a defense and armaments bubble. The U.S. is now at $1 trillion a year for defense spending. The European nations are mortgaging everything to the hilt to come up with money to build up their militaries, the rearmament plan. For what? Planning for a war with Russia. You think Europe can generate enough cash to win a war with Russia? And so what we're seeing is the old game, which is when the banks are in trouble, when the financial institutions are in trouble, go for war. Distract people away from what the banks have done, what the financial institutions have done, and blame a foreign enemy. And so that's where we are. And there's no way we're going to get out of this without either a total popping of bubbles and a crash, or a reversal of the economic policies of the last 50 years, going back to investment in physical economy, long-term low-interest credit made available to go to entrepreneurs and businesses that are sound, putting those that are deeply in debt into bankruptcy reorganization or putting them out of business. This is how government should function. The idea that somehow you're going to just feed money to those who can show on paper an immediate profit, that's the kind of senility that could damage nations to the point of the decision to go to war, and a war ultimately being a nuclear war. Now, are you willing to risk the danger of a nuclear war to bail out bankers like Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, or the bankers of BlackRock or Vanguard? So this is where it's essential that the American people start thinking soundly about real economics. The reason the debt is a problem, it's not because of the debt itself, it's because we went into debt to bail out previous debts. That makes no sense. And so it's important that people recognize that what Lyndon LaRouche said when he intervened in 2007, warning of a coming banking crisis, he knew what he was talking about. And his proposal, his 4 economic laws, made the difference, or would make the difference, between an existential crisis of the global system or a move toward peace and recovery and economic development. That's why we support projects such as the Gaza plan, the Oasis plan, the Bering Strait Tunnel, the U.S. getting involved with the Chinese Eurasian land bridge. These are projects which generate new wealth and create a capability to eventually deal with debt by producing new value in the system. So this is where we are. The diplomacy is back and forth, but the thinking on economics is catastrophically idiotic. And that's got to change.